I'm Ann Dart.
I'm Tracy Stormy.
And I'm Kathy Knight.
And together we are
It Was a Dark and Stormy Book Club,
a podcast for mystery lovers.
Welcome. Welcome back to another episode of It Was a Dark and Stormy Book Club. We have two interviews today. We will talk to John Verdon, who writes the Dave Gurney Mystery Series. But first, we are going to have an interview with John DeDakis.
Award-winning journalist and novelist John DeDakis is a former senior copy editor on CNN's The Situation Room with Wolf Blitzer. DeDakis, a former White House correspondent, is a writing coach, manuscript editor, and writing workshop leader. He is the author of 4 novels in the Lark Chadwick mystery suspense series. His 4th novel, Bullet in the Chamber, is the winner of the Reviewer's Choice, Forward Indies, and Feathered Quill Book Awards. His 5th novel, Fake, will be published by Strategic Media Books on September 1st, 2019. In his spare time, what little he has of it, DeDakis is a jazz drummer. Visit his website at www.johndedakis, that's JOHNDEDAKIS.com. Well, I did not know he was a jazz drummer. That's interesting.
Yeah, he's a multifaceted gentleman, so stay tuned.
We would like to welcome John DeDakis to our podcast. Welcome, John.
Thank you.
How did you get started writing mysteries?
I didn't actually start out to write a mystery. I just felt I wanted to get published. I wanted to write a book. It wasn't until much farther into the process that I discovered that I hadn't really written a mystery. I'd written a mishmash. I'd been getting rejections from agents and publishers. One rejection was particularly helpful when the person wrote, "It's not really literary, it's not a mystery, it's not a romance, I don't know what it is, therefore I can't market it." And so that prompted me to go to a book club that met in our neighborhood in Atlanta. They read the manuscript, 25 women read it over the summer, and then let me sit in on their critique. And as I listened to them pick it apart, I realized that I had 3 subplots that I didn't need, and that by extracting them, the manuscript went from a 150,000 word mishmash to a tightly written mystery suspense novel of 76,000 words. So I discovered the genre far along in the process.
That's a great idea. You went right to your source and got their opinion. That's awesome.
That's really important, I think, for any writer to get objective feedback from people who aren't emotionally invested in you, who will tell you the truth about what's working and what's not, because the longer you spend with your manuscript, the more attached you get to it, and you don't see things as clearly as a fresh pair of eyes.
Now, did you do like a blind, or were you part of the group when they were discussing the book?
Oh, I sat in on
goodness.
Their discussion, yeah.
Well, very good.
Your history in journalism gave you some insight into some great plot lines. Do you grab your stories and or characters from actual people or events?
I think that any author who will be honest will tell you that just about anything is fair game, including whatever you are able to dredge up from your subconscious that goes way back to the most recent headlines of the day. I think anything is possible, and I've extracted ideas both in terms of big stories and just microscopic details, all come from real life.
Speaking of real life, we couldn't have you on the show without you at least one story of anything that happened during your years at CNN.
Well, that's 25 years. Probably need to be a little more specific on...
Just tell us anything that struck you as interesting, or especially your years with Wolf Blitzer. I'm a huge Wolf Blitzer fan.
But that's a fun part of my story to tell, because the last 7 years that I was at CNN, I was there for 25 years, and the last 7 years were with Wolf on the Situation Room, where I was one of the copy editors. What Wolf would read, I'd have to see it first. He's so smart, he could ad-lib the show and wouldn't really even need scripts. But working with him was a wonderful experience, because he's a very straight-ahead journalist, but he's a lot funnier off camera.
Oh, really?
Yeah, he is. And he quotes his dad a lot. His dad, I think, came up with a lot of Yogi Berra-isms. For instance, Wolf will often say, as my late father, David Blitzer, would say, rich or poor, it's good to have money. He's a funny person, but he's a kind person. He really cares about the interns and the news assistants and offers advice and encouragement. He's very approachable. And at the same time, he's a journalist's journalist. More than anything, he is concerned about accuracy. I worked with him for 7 years, and I have no idea what his personal politics are. In fact, I've been told that he doesn't vote because he doesn't want his personal opinions to affect his coverage. I have seen him in interviews correct the record. Everyone is entitled to their own opinion, but they're not entitled to their own fact. Whether the person is from the left or the right, if they are misrepresenting the facts, he'll correct the record. That is almost a lost art right now.
Absolutely.
Yeah, especially in today's world. Do you miss the hubbub of working for a news organization that's on 24 hours a day?
Well, hubbub is definitely the word. And to be honest, no, I don't. When I was there, over the years, people would leave and they'd go, oh, I can't wait to get out of here. And then after the first big story would come along, they would say, oh, I miss you guys. And the first big story that came after I retired in 2013 was the Boston Marathon bombing. My first reaction was, I don't miss this at all. I know what's going on. 5 extra layers of management have just come in to tell you what you already know how to do. I'd been there and had had enough of it. There's a certain degree of chaos in a breaking news situation, and there are some people who really thrive on it. They're sort of adrenaline junkies. I don't know. I guess I'm more of a quiet, more organized soul. I kind of prefer in many ways the solitude that comes from being on my own. I'm energized by being around other people. I do a fair amount of teaching and speaking. I need to recharge my batteries, and that's not always possible in the, as you say, hubbub of the newsroom.
What made you decide to write a female protagonist?
I stumbled onto, and the experience was, I'd been a reporter for a long time, including a White House correspondent, but then when I joined CNN as a writer, it wasn't long after I came to the network in 1988 that one of the editors suggested that I should become an editor. And what he really meant that I want off nights and weekends and you'd be a great body to replace me. Sure enough, I became an editor. He got the great shift. I got overnights. And that, I discovered, was tedious. Paid well, and at that point we had a growing family and a mortgage and financial responsibilities. So I needed a creative outlet. I first started researching a biography of a person I knew who'd been murdered. The research of the project, dragging up all kinds of information about this guy that was new to the family and caused a lot of consternation. I shelved the project and started to experiment with fiction. And that is a big mental shift from day-to-day journalism, because unlike what certain presidents will tell you, it's a firing offense to make stuff up. And so that caused me to take my time making that mental transition to, in a sense, giving myself the freedom to create. And so early in the process, someone suggested that when you write, you should write in a way that stretches who you are. And so I'd never been a woman in this life, so I thought I'd give that a try. And that's, in essence, how I stumbled into it. Now, there's a deeper story on why I'm able to do that, but that's how it began, just as a way to stretch who I am as a writer.
It's not like you don't have any experience with women. We met your lovely wife at the book talk that you gave, so you do have some inspiration there.
I do. And Cindy we've been married 40 years. I met her, we were both 27. I joined the church choir at St. Andrew's Episcopal Church in Madison, Wisconsin, just to get involved. few months after I got there, she became the new choir director. So that worked out very well. And she is inspiring. And our oldest is a young woman, Emily, who is incredibly loquacious. And those are probably the two key women in my life, not to mention the fact that at CNN, that's 25 years of young women interns in their early to mid-20s who would tell me their stories about their boyfriends and their careers and their parents. And so the more you're around women and listen to them, the more, I think, informed and enlightened you can be about that. I teach people how to write novels. One of the classes has to do with writing in the voice of opposite sex. And I had a guy take the class. He raised his hand and he said, "I'm a cheater." And I said, "Excuse me?" He said, "I do not understand women, therefore I don't write them."
What man really understands women?
That's true.
What writers inspire you?
That's a hard question because that assumes that I'm well-read. And I feel I'm a remedial reader. I mean, I don't think I even appreciated fiction for a long time until actually after I'd gotten out of the Army and went back to school to finish my degree. And I was taking an American history class studying the 1930s. One of the assigned readings was The Grapes of Wrath by John Steinbeck. Of course, that's set in the Dust Bowl of the 1930s. And history came alive for me at that point, and so did historical fiction. So Steinbeck is an early inspiration. Michener is another one. I'm a journalist at heart, so I appreciate stories that make life and history come alive.
Well, that tells me you're just a clean slate as far as the fiction genre goes, which is great because you're doing it your own way.
I'm going to use that. Yeah.
Okay.
That's pretty true. Like John Grisham, I mean, it's not like I haven't read anything. I'm pretty sure that most of your listeners have read more widely than I have.
Now, which comes first for you, the title or the storyline?
That depends on the story, then the book. I'm in the process now of starting to make preliminary notes on my 6th novel. I've got the title, and I have some ideas for stories that, in a sense, spill over from the 5th novel, Fake, which comes out in September of 2019. So there will be some storylines that continue, but I don't have the actual story. I do have the title. The title may change. I don't know. Earlier books, Fast Track, which is the first one, didn't get a title until one of my beta readers suggested Fast Track to Death. And I thought, that's a little too much. I'll just go with Fast Track because trains figure prominently in the storyline. Bottom line, it really depends on where you are in the process and what jumps out. It's not a rigid, it has to be this way kind of thing for me.
I think it's so interesting how different authors approach that. Some insist on doing the title first, and some insist on waiting till the book is finished. And it sounds to me like you're open to both.
I am, and that goes to the heart of something also that's fundamental to writing, and that is, are you a seat of the pantser or are you a planner? The bottom line is both of those creative processes work. There are many well-known authors who just wing it. That's how they discover their characters and their story and so on. I, on the other hand, kind of prefer a bit of a roadmap to kind of know where I'm going. What I've discovered in the process is that I'm a plantser. I do have a destination in mind, but often when it comes to actually doing the writing, I haven't thought things through as clearly as I'd like. And the way I break writer's block is to just write. And so that's the sort of the serendipity of the seat of the pants approach. I know where I'm going, but I don't necessarily have enough light for the next steps. And that bit of light emerges in the writing process.
Could you tell our listeners a little bit about the Writers' Center?
The Writers' Center is a literary center based in Bethesda, Maryland. It's been in existence for about 40 years, and its purpose is to inspire and encourage and inform people about writing. So there are classes pretty much every day on poetry, memoir, the various aspects of novel writing. It's just a great resource for anyone, whether they're a beginner or advanced, to get a sense of how to approach their craft. Now, I would hasten to add that there are a lot of places like this around the country. I've not only teach at the Writers Center, but I've also taught at Hugo House in Seattle, the Loft in Minneapolis, the Muse in Norfolk. These are just some of the kinds of writing resources that are available in communities around the country.
Is this part of a university or is it operated individually?
It's private as far as I know, and it's a 501c3 nonprofit organization, as is, I think, the case in many of these. They're not really connected to any agency that I'm aware of.